Welcome to the Growth Room with David Daniels. Today, we're incredibly fortunate to have Jordan Levy, the visionary CEO and co-founder of CapSource. Jordan, with his Lehigh University degree, is a lauded educational technology business consultant who has a passion for helping students transition from education to work. Today, we'll be diving into his unparalleled approach to business consulting and exploring the significant trends he's observing in the industry. Jordan, it's a pleasure to have you. How are you today?
Hey, how are you? Great to be here, Dave.
Great, great. Can you share a little bit about your background and your role right now at CapSource?
Sure. So I have been working on CapSource. We're going to be 10 years in February of 2027, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah,
Been working,
congratulations.
thank you. Been working in experiential learning for higher education since my senior year of college, which was in 2014. Was when we got our first pilots and really became fully invested into it and kind of obsessed with the concept of innovating in higher ed and introducing industry, really organically, intentionally, and effectively into the higher learning experience. So, almost 15 years of doing that at this point, and very grateful to be a part of so many institutions that are trying to innovate the way that they deliver career aligned education to their students all over the country, all over the world. So I'm the co-founder and CEO. I serve primarily in a capacity to build new partnerships, grow existing partnerships, and motivate the product team to create a compelling platform that consistently delivers for our very diverse users working with diverse stakeholders.
Right, right. Man, tell me, what does a typical day look like for you in the business?
It's amazing because, I don't think there's so many times in your life that you get a chance to like really change that um, pretty significantly,
Right.
um, unless there's like the advent of new tech. And, I will say now with AI, like things are very different than they were a few years ago. Um, it used to be like you start with your inbox and then until you get to the very end of it. And now between the agents and bots and automation processes, like it's really about trying to prioritize. I mean, the key is using tools to figure out what are your most urgent things to work on as a leader.
Right.
How do you make sure you're there for your team, your clients, and then how do you then prioritize the next most important, next growth item on the checklist. So typically, yeah, it's starting off the day instead of just unburying from the inbox. It's really where are the most important priorities that have already been synthesized for me, and then from there, trying to get through. The list is definitely a big one, but it's really important for an entrepreneur, right? You gotta make sure you're serving everyone that you committed to, and that you're doing so in a way that's professional and comprehensive. And it's important in our industry. I mean, we sit in between some of the biggest industry players in the world and some of the biggest academic institutions in the world. So our role is just to make sure that they communicate well, that they understand the goals of their collaborations, the goals of what they've committed to and signed up to, and ultimately providing tools to make those successful.
No doubt, no doubt. What major shifts are you seeing in that collaboration between, high tech companies and the educational industry?
It's always very interesting. The low-hanging fruit back in the day used to be like, social content. So like we always used to ask like, oh, can students create social content? And now with student capacity to create prototypes, even without having design or engineering backgrounds, for students to create long-form deliverables, strategic plans, um, research back theses and evaluation approaches. Like students really now, especially because they are, it's native to them to use these tools. They have the capacity to drive such amazing outcomes. And I think, I always, that is new, right? It's not like, hey, can you make me 5 social posts. Like that's not what I want for students. That's not what students want for themselves. That's not what's really going to help them kind of uncover who they are and where they want to be in their career and what skills they want to use in their roles. So all of our collaborations like are designed with leaders to
Mhm.
engage with students. And that process is actually one of the most amazing things that comes out of these collaborations is that industry leaders learn from the unique questions and approaches that students bring to the table. And so
Mhm.
really what we're creating is an environment for that to free flow and for ultimately all to serve within a context, a project context, a case study, a mentorship, right? So like we want to create some guardrails because at the end of the day, it's very different than, you know, the textbook is the book, right? And like if you
Right.
go through the textbook the way the professor did, then you're going to know the information on the exams and then you're going to be able to perform and then you're going to be able to get a good grade that counts towards a degree. This approach of learning is very different. It's about, showing students how to use their skills, how to show up, how to ask good questions, how to create deliverables, how to, I've even seen students like how they approach ensuring alignment between their the objective that's assigned to them and their understanding, and between all these new tools, like you just get to see students are always on the cutting edge of wanting to try them, hearing about them, toying around with them. So it just creates such an amazing ongoing discussion, all to serve this core organization and objective. So I think that is what we're seeing is student capacity is exploding. I always, one of the most famous things I ever learned getting into this business was between 1950 and 2000. There's effectively 98% churn of the Fortune 500 companies. And
Hmm.
the question is like, why? These are the powerhouse companies. They like ran the show.
Right.
50 years ago, what happened? And my suspicion is if you don't consistently re-engage with the next generation, they're gonna forget about you.
Right.
You're gonna be, something that's old school and not with the times. And so I think that consistent reconnect, that inspiration, and then using it as a talent funnel. Like when you find the right person through these collaborations, now you have like someone who could potentially be a future C-suite executive that you're grooming from you know freshman year of college. So I think that's kind of the vision of the model is, if you could do that for 1 million students, now you're talking about making some real inroads for all of them into like who they really want to be and how they want to impact the world.
No doubt. No doubt. How is that turnover of the top, companies, the top 500 companies in America? And I'm sure if 98% of them went by the wayside and, since 50 to, those 50 years, these last 26 years have probably turned it over some more. How does that impact your business at all or your growth strategy?
Small
Excuse me.
businesses are always so much more nimble. And so often, when we ask larger organizations to participate, they will. It just takes them a lot longer. But at the end of
Right,
the day, it's one department, one leader who's taking on a project. It's not the entire, you're never working on something for the entire firm, even if it is the C-suite of a large organization. So I think for us, like our we I love to see the way that small businesses in their dynamic nature and kind of like fast growing, easy to move and pivot nature work with students because it's like the project takes on a world of its own as they work together, as opposed to
right,
like, between guardrails at the academic institution and guardrails at a large industry institution. It's a set scope and it's got to like work exactly that way versus if you're working with like small businesses, entrepreneurs, social impact organizations, nonprofits, like they're drinking from the fire hose. They're just trying to keep their head above water,
no
right?
doubt.
And then so students come in and you're essentially like, oh my God, I didn't realize that we just brought in, our pinch hitter. And it's
Right.
like what they can create if you give them the right context, resources, and coaching something that explodes. So I encourage large organizations to consider how they're engaging talent. A lot of these processes for them are like set in stone. Well, we have a summer internship for that. Well, your
Right.
summer internship's like engaging like a few dozen students. Like some of our case competitions, we can engage hundreds of students all at once, and like that one experience could be the one thing that changes the way they look at your company, your industry, where when they think about their learning experience and reflection, that becomes something that lives with them on their resume and as part of like who they are as a emerging leader. When they choose vendors, they're going to be thinking about that. Whether
No
it's
doubt.
someone who serves pizza or cybersecurity, right? Like it doesn't matter. If you're engaging with the next generation, they're going to be leaders in 10 years. And if you want to be around in 10 years, you got to work with them.
No doubt. No doubt. That's great. What would you say is working well in from a business standpoint? What's working, I guess, the best for you right now, and possibly what's been frustrating at all?
Yeah, I something that our bread and butter is we help academic, organizations find partners, and we are extremely good at that. We do it quickly. We find right-sized projects for the right types of programs, whether it's some niche engineering student or it's some quant in a finance, or business area, or social work programs, or public administration programs, or urban planning programs. All of these, or like if you're training students on a skill, on a discipline to ultimately enter industry, there's an industry organization out there that should want to work with them. And
Right.
so I think always for us is like a cool indicator, not so cool indicator. If we can't find organizations willing to work with programs, to us it's a big indicator that area is a dying field. So just, at the end of the day, that's what we do really well. Well, what we are always going to struggle with is, unless you have millions of dollars to build a fully comprehensive multi-stakeholder platform, requires so many resources. Every single workflow needs to be tested every single time that things need to be pushed to production. And we have many tools. We have tools that you could take evaluations and provide feedback on your peers or on your project experience, or industry can provide evaluations on student performance and deliverables, right? So each one of those is an individual tool, right? And that tool needs to
Right.
be built well, maintained well, and to scale with the platform. So these things, I would love, it's like I talk to all these organizations that are like looking to get into the industry, thinking about investing into CapSource, buying CapSource. And it's like always interesting to me, like, what do they find the most valuable? Our partnership network, that to us is what we built over 15 years. It's an extremely
Right.
valuable network. We have 50,000 industry contacts of people who, have received information about these programs and considered it in some way. And then the platform is really like that's what all these investors want to see, is a platform that can make monthly recurring revenue of X and annual recurring revenue of Y, Z, etc. So like
No
I
doubt.
think that to us is like I always all the funding that we get for our bread and butter, we put into our scalable product and build workflows to make our work go faster. Because I think that's the key to success for the future is if we're working the same way as before AI, then we're not going to be around for very much longer. So
That's true.
that goes
That's
for
true.
every process, right?
Right. Right. You mentioned some possible dying industries for our listeners. Could you name a couple that you see that are possibly on the ropes? I
Well,
just I just don't want my daughter to be, wasting my college money, going to those industries.
yeah, I mean, I had a conversation the other day with, my wife works for Ernst and Young. Their
Okay.
main, bread and butter for the longest time was accounting, and they're a big four
Right.
accountant. They don't even make a majority, even close to it. I think it's like less than 30% of their revenue is produced through what is literally their core competency
Okay.
as a public accounting firm. They're like one of four firms, that can audit public companies. And forever we're going to need that level of assurance, but that does not make
Right.
it a growing industry. And
Right.
so like I had a Lehigh student. I went, Lehigh, as you mentioned, and I studied accounting and finance, and I literally pivoted away from KPMG after my internship because I was like, I just learned that that industry is not right for me, the roles and responsibilities. And
Right.
so I find that that's one that is just, I'm not necessarily going to say accounting is dying. Like, and I'm also not going to say that learning accounting is not a good field, but I
Right.
also want to teach students like what they can do with an accounting background, just like I did, right? Like I can look at your business and another business and understand ratios, cash flow, financial statements. Like that's a very important skill. It's always going to be, but building them and auditing them, that's something that's likely going the way of AI. So it's just you have to think about as you're studying or as you're choosing what to study or choosing an industry to go into, you should first really think about like if this whole thing was run by a computer, how would it go? And then
Right.
you think, how soon is that likely to happen? And
No
then if
doubt.
the answer is, well, you know what? Yeah, in theory, there's a new whole concept by I think it's the Airbnb guy, or maybe yeah, he like a burrito dispenser machine, right? It's like
Right.
one of these like, really cutesy ideas where it's like the autonomous burrito. All
Right.
of the burrito is got the ingredients in the machine. It's composed in the machine, rolled in the machine, and then delivered using autonomous vehicles. So the idea is like effectively you could get this whole thing without anybody ever touching it.
Right.
Well, and then they're like, well, what about the raw ingredients? And it's like, actually, someone needs to cut them, right? And
Right.
like okay, so there is still some level of intervention. And then how soon is our entire Chipotle apparatus going to be an autonomous burrito shop? Probably not next year, right?
Right.
So thinking about like operations and supply chain and all of these things that are going to be required even to help that organization move in that innovative way, that's the way I would be thinking as somebody who aspires to be a leader in the world of AI.
No
And
doubt.
if really the answer is, I'm pretty sure that I could do a good job auditing a public accounting firm myself with ChatGPT, then maybe that's not a field that's worth investing into. Even engineering, software engineering. I mean, that's a
Right.
huge thing. It's like our platform was built on Ruby on Rails. In theory, you can ask ChatGPT to build code on Ruby on Rails. You still need someone who's like putting it all together and make sure it works, but it's a
Right.
totally different field than it was. And you have to think about, are we going to a place where that whole thing is going to be managed, parts of it are going to be managed, and then where is there opportunity for the human touch to make it 10x, right? So like
Right.
if the AI can make your productivity 100x, that's okay as long as you can make that productivity 10x on top of it. And that's what I
Right.
would say is the best thing to think about as non-dying fields but growing fields.
No doubt. No doubt. No doubt. With the cap source, what would you say are the main metrics that you're most focused on improving right now?
Well, one of the hardest things to track is like true attribution to outcomes based on like one experience. Like obviously we don't run an entire institution. We don't even run an entire academic program. We run an experience within a class, within an academic program, within an institution. So to say this
Right.
student who worked on CapSource got hired more quickly, earned more as their initial salary, got promoted more quickly, um, uh, is more desirable to outside firms and lateral hiring. Like all of those things are stuff that I really wish I could track better. It's just that
Right.
kind of, that kind of concept is an extremely time and resource intensive, even though, the AI is going to be helpful. So I would say those are things we care about. Those are the things we're always looking to improve is how well do we actually get students into full-time paid roles? How
Right.
well do those students excel in those roles? How long do they stay in those roles? How well do they earn and get promoted within those roles? Those are the types of things that we really care about. Also, there's other things like how well our system, does at recruiting the right partners, onboarding those partners, and then providing good experiences where the students have a high net promoter score, the industry partner does, the school institution does. So those are the types of things that like are just so important that you're just like, if that doesn't go well, then of course the outcome of the career outcome's not coming. So you got to always focus on like, what are we actually building and delivering? And then it's like, okay, also, like, what are the outcomes of that? And then like how do we scale it and track it at that scale? And so I think
Right.
that's kind of where we're wrestling.
No doubt. No doubt. Where do you want to be with CapSource in the next 6 to 12 months, would you say?
I want to keep automating some of our processes. I want to launch more software focused partnerships that aren't as service intensive. Um, and we want to keep building our team, and we want to attract good partners on all sides of our marketplace. We want to be something that students, think is exciting, and something that they would advocate to get more of, and to 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 encourage their peers at different institutions to look into. We introduced my favorite thing outside of like projects is our core business. Like, hey, the student is studying analytics. They're going to work on building a dashboard. Okay, that's
Right.
like it's really cool to do that. Simple project for us to coordinate, right? How many people need help building a data dashboard? Everybody needs help with that. So I think the thing that really is exciting to me is I've always my original business idea when I was a Lehigh student was case studies.
Right.
Because really the whole thing is like our projects are always going to be less scalable because it requires a synchronous collaboration between two stakeholders or many
Right.
stakeholders. And the more stakeholders you add, the more complicated. So case studies, what I really like about that is it's really designed as like a learning widget, but if you can create them fast and keep them up to date and accompany it with the right type of information package, now you really have a learning experience that you can use and make valuable in 10 minutes
Right.
or a half hour to an hour class or a series of 3 classes as opposed to it's like 2 hours of coordination between me, the partner, me, the educator, the partner, me, to just build a scope that everyone agrees to. And then it's hours and hours of engagement from there. So
Right.
like case studies, okay, this student this company, one of my favorite case studies is actually based on an old project from Caterpillar. They basically asked a Notre Dame MBA team to look into what would be required if, like, over the next 30 years, we wanted to switch our mining division from diesel engines to electric. Go. What's required?
Right.
And like, what are the risks associated, and where do you find those? So, like, you have to learn 50 things before you can even be knowledgeable. But
Right.
now it's like you can get that and say, wait, I don't want to do this, but I kind of like the supply chain part, or I kind of like the part where we were researching minerals that were coming out of mines in Africa and Latin America. Or
Right.
I actually thought that the yellow cat machine is the coolest thing ever, and I want to work for Caterpillar. And so it's like you can literally all you need to do with a case study is just inspire one thing, and then you
You
could
thought.
change someone's entire life, and
No
it's
doubt.
much more scalable. So that's really something that we're bringing to market. The whole concept is students can learn, earn, and get hired all from just doing their homework. And I think that that would just revolutionize, and it just solves so many problems for higher ed. Because like, how do you keep it relevant? You need a ton of diverse content and a ton of diverse partners. And so like, and the students and faculty, they all need this type of access, and it needs to evolve. So it's like all that's what we're trying to build is an ecosystem where students literally could be like, oh, the person who solves this problem for Caterpillar is going to get paid 5 grand.
Right.
Like that's sick. Like I would love to do that. And it's like it's just going to get them to work harder, learn more, and then really validate that. That's like one of the last things I'll say on this point is the one of the best things you could do, as a good citizen is like to help someone find their life partner, right? Like, hey,
Yes, sir.
look, you two, look like you'd be a good couple, and you guys should get to know each other, and then
Right.
they get together, they're together forever, they have kids, they build the world, right?
Right.
The next best thing is to find someone a fulfilling career and career path. And I
That's it.
think that's what we do at CapSource. It's just consistently drive sparks. We're just honestly, it's not even, we're just creating sparks flying in every direction and then hope that these students take with them that new energy and excitement for what they've uncovered through these learning experiences.
Very nice, man. I can feel your excitement coming through. So that's great. Last question, then I'll let you enjoy the rest of your day. I always ask this question: if you had a magic wand to fix just one area of the business that might be slowing you down at all, what would it be?
It's funny because like it was going back to the first question is like, how's your day to day, and
Typical
then
day,
I
yeah.
was like, well, how is it different now? So, one of the things I really would I find myself I'm building the AI automations because
Mhm.
like I have access to everything, right?
Right,
But really what I would love is somebody who all they wanted to do was just build and tweak and those types of workflows and automations. They are so much easier to build than they used to be. So I that's really I think the magic wand where I think it's just being an AI tools ninja, like somebody who literally can come in and say, if we sign up for this product and then integrate these two products and then build this type of agent and workflow and then this part into the product. Now you have this whole thing
right,
that can be a standalone process that doesn't require manual intervention. Like that would be amazing. But it's like, even to just have pieces of that, you make your life easier.
right,
But I see where this is going. And like, I think that's the magic wand is let's figure out who is the right person to build those tools to get this done for the business to make it super scalable, repeatable. Um, I think that's really like the magic wand is really for all industries to do that. And it's
right,
amazing. Sometimes we see these organizations, like even the larger players, like the way that they're using AI, and then even like the legacy players and how they're, and it's like, wow, like there's no way that you're going to be able to defend yourself from a newcomer unless you really innovate. So I think that's really my motivation is like the magic wand is understanding how to use the tools and getting them to sing well together.
right, right. No doubt, no doubt. Well, you did a great commercial for me there, Jordan. I really appreciate it. But more than that, your love for what you do in affecting, especially students' lives is awesome for me. So I really appreciate you being on here today, and much success in the future. Thanks.
Thank you.